Hi, Mac and Mark today. I'm filling in once again for Jody McDonald. Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Farzetta. That's your man right there, Mr. John McMullen, all things Eagles. John, good morning. How you doing today, friend?
I'm doing well. Good to see you, Mark. I get you more for than a half hour today. That's exciting.
That's right, man. No, I'm excited to go the distance with you today, my friend. We got so much to get into. Preseason game number 1 down in Balmer, taking on the Ravens. Those other birds, of course, just down I-95 with a belly full of crabs. We'll be feeling good, hopefully. Crab cakes. I don't want to make anybody. Are you a crab guy? Do you love your crabs?
Oh, I love my crab. That's my favorite favorite food in the world.
Yeah. My mother's from down there. I had a crab feast last weekend, cracking them open, baby, having myself a time. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Can't go wrong.
Eagles fans, yeah. Hopefully some Eagles fans will do that as well. No, you can't go wrong, John. You're exactly right. I hate this about myself, but I gotta admit this, John. I oddly get excited for preseason game number 1. Any preseason game. I want to watch the position battles. I want to see who wins those battles. I know do you even call it the unofficial depth chart? I don't know, but
it's about. I love it. It's one of the low key. I put this on Twitter. It's one of my low key favorite days of the year, the unveiling of the unofficial depth chart. Because I don't think fans understand how not effort is put into this thing, and it just creates just a whirlwind. And it was funny, our buddy Brandon Lee Gouton, I give Bleeding Green Nation credit. Evidently there was, I'm trying to pull it up as I'm talking to you, Mark. On Ross Tucker's podcast, another friend of the show, a former Eagles intern was on. He now does some podcast work. And he told a story. At 22 years old, he was responsible for updating the depth chart. I mean, and it's just the people lose their minds over it. It's not like Nick Sirianni's handing the, from Price Waterhouse, how they do the awards and handing it over and saying, christening it. It's, low man on the totem pole. Hey, did you go to practice yesterday? Put something together. But boy, it creates a lot of talk. It's hilarious.
All right. So maybe you can help me with this then. So Cam Jurgens, according to the unofficial depth chart, is your starting right guard, to the surprise of no one. However, every other position battle, quote unquote, has I'll call it bunch formation under the first team.
Yeah,
I don't remember seeing that in years past. And if I did see it, then that means that other position battles weren't set up. Like, for instance, Cam Jurgens. Okay, but in the running back, first team running back, there's 5 running backs. So apparently there's going to be 5 running backs. I don't know if you're only going to have like 2 offensive linemen. Yeah. I don't know, but there's 5 running backs. You're going to have a situation now where you have 2 starting safeties at the free safety or strong safety position, because both Kayvon Wallace and Terrell Edmonds were listed as first-team starters. And then I think it was Will Linebacker was the other one, with Christian Ellis getting the top bid, but he's running along there with Nicholas Morrow. Have you ever seen that before with the multiple first-teamers in the same spot?
Oh, yeah. Well, okay. It's a college thing. That's where it started. You got and/or when they don't want you, competitive advantage, Nick Sirianni, 23 in a row for Baltimore. So you need some kind of an advantage to win a preseason game against that team. No, being facetious. Yeah, I mean, it's been around for a while. It's mainly a college thing. But, yeah, if you'll notice, the running backs are also in alphabetical order.
Are they in alphabetical order?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So that's how they put it together. And, that's why you're supposed to, you don't have to listen to me, but you're listening to somebody who's there all the time. And you get a better feel for the depth chart and where it actually is. My biggest pet peeve, and Jody and I talk about this all the time, the defense, they don't even play the defense of the depth chart. They play 5-2. They play 4-2. They play, with one linebacker, and they got Sam, Mike, and Will, and they got a front 4. and Brandon Graham as a starting defensive end. I mean, does anybody not pay attention to how they play defense?
Mm.
You got a nose tackle, you got 2 4-eyes, you got 2 edge rushers. That's the 5-man front, the 4-man front. In obvious passing situations, there's never 3 linebackers on the field, ever. Nakobe Dean was the 3rd linebacker on this team last year. He had 34 snaps because TJ Edwards and Kaiser White were able to stay healthy for the entire season. And yet people are still talking, do they play a 4-3? Do they play a 3-4? How about neither?
Yeah.
It's a right answer.
Yeah. And you have a guy like Avonte Maddox playing 75% of your snaps as your nickel corner. So yeah, it's the base defense.
The 4-3. The base defense is the nickel, as you point out, Mark.
Exactly. So all right, where are we at, John? Going into preseason game number 1. I know you have said multiple times, multiple outlets that Kenny Gainwell is RB1 for this team. And we broke this down. We talked about this a lot yesterday. But now that you're going to be going into this preseason game, because you consider him RB1, is he going to get any snaps? Who do you think is getting snaps out of that backfield going up against the Ravens?
Well, that's another thing. We got to get Ethan Hunt on the case to try to find out, who's going to play for the Philadelphia Eagles in the first preseason game, because that information is just too important to hand out by the head coach. They had a double header last night in the NFL. If you're really sick and you're watching NFL Network, Houston, New England, and I believe Seattle, Minnesota. So is looking at it that everybody, New England sat 33 players. Seattle was over 30. Minnesota was 26, 27. And Houston was the lowest because they're the worst team. So they don't really have a lot of guys they got to protect. They were at 18, I believe. So, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. Let's put it this way. If the Eagles do play their starters, be in your seat. Don't be in the kitchen getting stuff because they're not going to be in long. But the second part that complicates it is Cleveland's going to be in Monday. So, in less than a week, you're going to see the Eagles play 2 preseason games and have 2 joint practices. So, because the game next week is Thursday, that timing indicates, and the only thing Nick gave you yesterday was it could affect his decision. That timing of Cleveland being in essentially immediately. They play, they have a rest day, then joint practice, bang. And that's for the starters. That's where the starters are going to get their work. So, yeah, don't expect to see a lot of the key players in Baltimore. Whether they, Jalen Hurts has a lot of cachet now, runner-up MVP, 3rd NFL Network list, top 100 from his peers. I asked him that yesterday, Mark. I said, what's your feeling on preseason football? And he said, hey, if we're playing, I want to play. He might go to the head coach and say, I want a series or 2, and he might defer to him at this point. Not 2. Last year, he played in the first preseason game. They had, and he was 6 for 6. It was good foreshadowing of the season. He had a perfect passer rating, and then he was out, 1 drive. If it's going to happen, that's how it's going to happen. 1 drive, out.
Fair enough. One of the other things I know was asked to Jalen Hurts yesterday was that whole coaching hard story that has been a storyline this training camp. Nick Sirianni not afraid to get in his face. When the 2 met some years ago, it was all about how Jalen Hurts likes to be coached hard. Don't be afraid, coach, to coach me hard. I like how that's become a storyline. How much does that really set the precedent, though, for everybody else in that locker room when they see a guy like Jalen Hurts, who Cam Jurgens pointed out, I think it was yesterday, he's the highest paid guy. When he's the highest paid guy and he's working that hard, you want to do that same thing. That's how the culture and the tone is set in that locker room. It's got to also apply to the fact that the coach gets on him when he is not having himself a good practice, when he's not playing to the standard that he's already set. How does that affect the rest of the locker room?
Yeah, I think it's a good thing. I mean, I don't think it's a new thing. I'm surprised it popped up. You remember he was getting yelled at on the sidelines the one time. You know, Nick has brought this up constantly. You know, what they have in common, they're both the sons of football coaches. So they both have that same mentality of getting yelled at from an early age, and they take it the right way. Whereas, you know, I don't think Robert Saleh and Nathaniel Hackett are yelling at Aaron Rodgers. I just don't believe that. You know, he's running that show, so to speak. And that's most superstar quarterbacks. You know, Patrick Mahomes, even Andy. You know, he's not going balls to the wall against Patrick Mahomes. Jalen's unique. Yeah, and I think that's a good thing because if somebody's going to say, "Woe was me," the coach is being hard, you know, there's certain guys, Bill Parcells, Mike Zimmer was probably the most recent, who ironically is unironically is a Bill Parcells guy. So you know where he got it from. Um, you know, that's sort of an old school way of coaching that you don't see much today with the new generation of player. Yeah, it's unique. And you can't complain if you're on the Eagles and the head coach is yelling at you because he'll yell at the starting quarterback. So I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, I love it. I know a lot of people can identify with it because, I mean, you go out and you talk to fans at any point, and they're telling you about how, you know, how if you drop a pass, you should run a lap, you know, stuff like that, you know. But when it is the guy that is, you know, making an All-Pro as your quarterback, and as you mentioned, the other accolades that he's had, the MVP runner-up and all that, yeah, that's if you could get on that guy, you could get on anybody. As far as the other starters that could be playing in preseason game number one, the only thing that Nick Sirianni was a little bit open about yesterday during his press conference was the young guys and potentially seeing the young guys out there. So do you think we're going to get our first glimpse at Nolan Smith coming around the edge? Yeah. Do you think we're going to see, okay, Jalen Carter? What are your expectations there?
Yeah, those guys are going to play. And that's sort of, you know, just part of it. And they've started them. I mean, Jalen Carter has gotten a handful of first team reps. I'm surprised how slow they've gone with him. So he's played the majority of his work with the second team. Nolan Smith got a few more first team reps, but that was only because Hassan Reddick was out early in camp with the sore groin. And he's back mainly working with the second team. So yeah, those guys are going to play. Sidney Brown as well. It's going to be very important for Sidney because he's not been able to break through. I think, you know, the Eagles have so much depth on the defensive line. I don't think it's a surprise that they're going slow with Jalen Carter or Nolan Smith. But at safety, I think a lot of people thought Sidney Brown would be the starter by week one. It is not trending in that direction. Now, hey, you know, preseason's important for guys like that. That's where it is important. And the joint practices as well, because he'll get plenty of reps there. So there's plenty of time to make up sort of the gap. And he's certainly got more talent than the people ahead of him on the depth chart. But yeah, it's important for younger players, rookie players, and that kind of thing. It's not important for Jason Kelsey and Lane Johnson and Fletcher Cox, et cetera, Brandon Graham, the quarterback, A.J. Brown, Devontae, even younger stars. Certainly Landon Dickerson, who has a history with injuries. Josh Sweat, who has a history of injuries. They're going to be very cautious with him, as they always are. Hassan Reddick, obviously. Maybe the most interesting of the so-called key players to me will be Nakobe Dean. Like, where are they with Nakobe Dean? Are they going to defer to him like he should be? Probably shouldn't be. We just talked. I mean, he's only had 34 snaps. He's in his NFL career. He's just missed essentially 4 consecutive practices of teamwork. You probably want to see him out there, but he's probably the most interesting how I want to see how they handle him. He's the most interesting to me.
My gut tells me he doesn't play Saturday night, and it's for the reasons that you pointed out that Nick Sirianni was talking about, is because it's such a quick turnaround where the Browns are in town and you'll have the joint practices. Do you expect Nakobe Dean to be out there on this Saturday night?
Well, here's what I said no.
Okay.
I said no originally. Now, I thought the Eagles wouldn't keep. I thought the Eagles would keep him limited for yesterday's practice, and he'd work in individual and not do teamwork again, and that would make it an easy decision to sit him. But he was back. He was a full go at practice. So I was surprised by that. I was surprised that the Eagles did it that way. I think, though, that they're going to treat him like an entrenched starter. And they did that with Jalen 2 years ago when his first season. We're all saying, oh, he's got to have some reps, right? He needs some reps. And then we're like, no, he's a starting quarterback. We're not worried about it. He's entrenched. Now, obviously, that's a far more important position. But Nakobe's the quarterback of the defense. It is important. And yeah, how they handle him the entire preseason is going to be interesting to me.
Okay. You mentioned something a second ago, and you're not the first person I've heard say this, so it does have me a little bit concerned here. Why is it not trending in the right direction for Sidney Brown to be a starting safety on this team? A lot of people, obviously, they invest a nice pick in Sidney Brown. He's got a great college resume now coming into the pros. Kayvon Wallace has not had a great start to his NFL career, was kind of pushed to the wayside by the coaching staff under Jonathan Gannon. Wasn't really grabbing, eyeballs on him, of course, as a safety. Now you have Terrell Edmonds in here. Why is Sidney Brown not learning the playbook? Is he slow at the NFL level, trying to understand what's going on around him? Or is it the exact opposite with Kayvon Wallace and Terrell Edmonds just looking that much better? Why is Sidney Brown not trending in the direction of being a starter?
Well, and I should have added by week 1, I think the goal is to get him on the field by some point. It might be week 8, week 9. He's got, more talent. I'm not saying long term. I just think week 1, Foxborough, it's not trending in a positive direction.
Okay.
He's on the third team now. I mean, he fell behind Justin Evans for getting reps. So right now, Reed Blankenship's he's a starter.
Yeah.
And then it's been Terrell Edmonds and Kayvon Wallace. Terrell has seemed to have inched ahead again over the past couple of days, but I think that'll be, the Cleveland practices will be big for that. Kayvon, I think the new coaching staff probably really helped Kayvon Wallace because I think he was a little pigeonholed by the old group. And they're taking a new look at him. He's taking advantage of it. And then Justin Evans is a player that you don't hear much about, but I think the coaching staff thinks a lot higher of him, especially his coverage skills, than maybe the average fan. And for those who don't know, I mean, that guy was once a second-round pick, a pretty high pick, and he was a starter in Tampa Bay before injuries kind of took over for a few years. So he's got some talent. And then Sidney's been on the third team with either Tristan McCullum or Josiah Scott playing safety. It's just a young player who he plays a million miles an hour is how I describe it. And he's just, when he guesses right, it looks really impressive. But often he guesses wrong. And that'll come with experience. He's got to slow down, needs sort of a dampener. He's like Chip Kelly. If Chip Kelly's scheme turned into a player, it would be Sidney Brown. He's always going, and when it works, and he, boom, he's there. But Kenny Gainwell, it was a red zone drill. They ran sort of an inside sweep, inside handoff turned into a sweep to Kenny. Sidney had him dead to rights, and he's like, boom, he's got this impressive burst. And Kenny's just like, all right, shook, came inside, easy touchdown. That's the kind of thing. And he's still feeling his way, but he's got a lot of talent. I just think week one is not trending in a positive direction.
Gotcha. You mentioned Kenny Gainwell there a second ago. I hadn't seen this drill yet. I've heard of this drill. I just didn't see that the Eagles did it. And I think it was Dave Zingaro that asked Kenny Gainwell about the drill. And it was who was it? Jamal Singleton, the running back coach for the Eagles, putting on a boxing glove and punching the running backs, trying to punch the ball loose. And Kenny Gainwell did say that sometimes Singleton misses. He doesn't just get the ball; he gets the arm. He'll get you somewhere else, unfortunately. But he said that that's a drill that they've been doing for a little bit here. I hadn't seen it. Is this the first time at Eagles practice that their running backs coach are putting on the boxing gloves?
No, he's been doing it since he got here.
Okay.
I mean, Jamal, by November every year, Jamal Singleton is just worn out from just beating the crap out of people. His hands are like, since day one, he's been doing it. And it is fun to watch. And, they not only have Jamal puts the boxing gloves on and he'll take swings at people. They also have boxing gloves on big sticks.
I remember. I remember seeing that, yeah.
And he also has this sort of chain on the football drill, which is a lot of fun, which I haven't seen this year yet, but he's done it in the past. And, guys really have a difficult time. And it's fun, especially the first time, where he just jerks that chain and it's coming out. And they're like, God. Yeah, a lot of expletives. Yeah, he's a fun coach, Jamal Singleton, to watch. Yeah, and he's an Air Force guy, and he will knock the what out of you.
They released, if people haven't seen it, they released a video. The Eagles put out a video on their Twitter.
The drone video. Yeah, the drone was there.
The drone was there with the getting the aerial shots of the gauntlet drill, which Kenny Gainwell said was his favorite. He likes the gauntlet drill. And then there was a follow-up question. It was like, what about that drill where you get punched? And he's like, not my favorite, but, it's the drill that helps us because it's just like a game, minus the boxing glove. You don't have that in the game swinging at the ball. But one of the things I found interesting was that Kenny Gainwell said it's a drill that really does help them progress in terms of making sure they do have that good ball security.
Yeah, it should. I mean, they've been very good with ball security, generally. They put up big ball security. It kind of worked against them. They were tremendous for the first half of the season, and they put up these big banners about ball security, and then they started turning it over a little bit. But they've been very good with ball security. And, that's one of the – when they do have some issues – you'll hear Nick at practice really ramping up during ball security drills. So they pay a lot of attention to it. And yeah, Jamal does a tremendous job, but he's been doing it since day one, since he got here. Yeah.
That's great. When we see the offensive line, you mentioned Jason Kelce most likely not playing in this game. He doesn't need the reps, obviously, but can I assume
now real quick?
Yeah.
Again, I go back to the first. I don't think they're going to play. That's my assumption. If they do play, like I said, Jalen Hurts has some cachet. They're not putting Jalen Hurts on the field without the first team offensive line. So, they might play a series. That's your ceiling. And that's what happened last year. Or it might be 2 series if they go 3 and out. But last year they scored. I forget how many plays it was, so it was 1 series. And that's sort of the ceiling, not only for the offensive line, the quarterback, all the key players. That's sort of the ceiling. And the timing of that Cleveland practice, that's why I lean towards last year. It was a Saturday game, so they played the first game. Then they had more time. And that's why they probably did it the way they did it. They don't have any time this time. That's why I'm leaning towards they probably rest most of the starters. But, hey, Jalen might put his foot down. Like I said, he's got some cachet. A lot of things in play.
Absolutely, a lot of stuff in play there. So when it comes to guys like Tyler Steen, are we looking at him? Because I do want to get a look at him at the right guard spot, and if he does have to go in there, I know there could be some change in the offensive line as the season goes on, the ebbs and flows of the year, of course. But when it comes to a guy like Tyler Steen, how much of him do you think we'll see on Saturday night?
Oh, a lot of Tyler Steen. I think he's going to play right guard and left tackle because they're cross-training him at his natural position as well, which is, left tackle. Played tackle in college. He played right tackle, then left tackle, but he played left tackle at Alabama. And yeah, he'll play there and he'll also play at right guard. So you're going to see a lot of Tyler Steen, a lot. You might see a whole half, something like that of nature. He'll be a real big part of it.
I know these two are battling it out for the third wide receiver spot right now, but Quez Watkins got another, I don't know if you want to call it endorsement by Reed Blankenship yesterday when he said of the young guys, and I guess he's not including Devontae Smith in this, but of the young guys, Quez Watkins has really grabbed his attention. How much of Quez, how much of Zacchaeus, whichever you want to say it, however, how much of those guys are we expected to see run with either, Marcus Mariota or Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, those guys have to play. I mean, AJ and Devontae are the protected ones at receiver. Everybody else has got to play. And you'll see some Quez, probably not a ton. Alameda, by the way, you mentioned Reed bringing up Quez. I was surprised James Bradbury brought up Alameda because Alameda had a problem with some drops earlier in camp, but he's been better over the past couple of days. He's made some big plays. So James Bradbury's taken notice of that. You're going to see both of those guys and, the Joseph Nadas of the world, the back end receivers. They just brought in a kid, Johnny King, who's like 6'5". You're going to see him. He's impressive physically. Britton Covey, keep an eye on him because he looks much quicker, much more competent this year as a slot receiver. Greg Ward, Old Faithful, just always doing the right things. You're going to see Greg. Tyree Cleveland, Jaden Hazelwood. You're going to see all those guys. But Alameda and Quez they'll be the key guys. They won't play as much because they're going to be on the team, but they're going to play.
Fair enough. Now, in honor of my dear friend, our dear friend, Jody McDonald, coming up, I do have to ask you about the tight end battle. I know Jody always likes getting into that conversation, and we haven't even mentioned it yet, John, but we've talked about these individual players on the field coming up on Saturday night for their first preseason game, but there's one thing we haven't talked about yet, and I think it's the number one concern. Number one thing I'm going to be watching for coming up in this game on Saturday night against the Ravens. More Birds 365.